Welcome to Therapy in the Great Outdoors, a podcast about the business and practice of nature-based pediatric therapy of all kinds. If you are a nature-loving therapist who works with children, this podcast will help you start taking your work outdoors into nature and help you grow a profitable nature-based therapy practice or program that connects children to nature and changes their lives and yours forever. I'm your host, the ever honest, always 100% real, Laura Park Figueroa. I have been a pediatric occupational therapist for over 20 years. But 7 years ago, I almost left the field entirely. I was so burned out. And nature-based therapy is what saved me. It reignited my love of my work, and I saw profound changes in the children that I was working with. I'm the founder of Outdoor Kids OT and the creator of the TGO approach, an evidence-based framework for nature-based pediatric therapy services. I've helped dozens of pediatric therapists start and grow successful nature-based practices through my business coaching and online programs, the latest of which is the Therapy in the Great Outdoors community, TGO for short. TGO is an online membership site with loads of resources to support you every step of the way as you start and grow your nature-based therapy work. You can find out more at therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com. Working outdoors with children can be a wild ride. Are you ready for the adventure? Let's jump in. Welcome to episode 12 of Therapy in the Great Outdoors. This episode is inspired by a recent series that I did on my Instagram account called 10 Reasons to Take Pediatric Therapy Outdoors. That was the Reels format. And in this podcast format, I hope to be able to explain a little more and give you some sneak peeks into some of the research that I'm doing, which will hopefully keep me motivated to continue doing this PhD, which sometimes I am wondering why I ever started in the first place at this point in my process. So it is really, really amazing the stuff I'm learning in the research, and yet the whole project feels completely and utterly overwhelming and like it will never end right now. That is just the reality. You know, as always, I'm keeping it real. So it's encouraging to me when I take my work and share it with people. That is something I love to do. If you have never heard of the book Spark Type by, I think it's Jonathan Field. He has a podcast, I think called Good Life Podcast. This is what happens on podcasts when I start talking about something, because I don't really script these. I don't have the reference. So I think those are correct. But he wrote a book called Spark Type. And one of the things that I learned in that book is that I just really love to share what I'm learning with people. It's like when I learn something, I have to share it. It just motivates me and encourages me. And I love to share it with others. And so in this episode, what I hope to do is take these 10 reasons to take pediatric therapy outdoors, and many of them actually were informed by my research. Now, I have to say, I have not finished analyzing the 22 interviews and thousands of pages of data and photos that I have for my study. So this is all preliminary and may not even end up in the model that I develop out of the research. So just take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, as in these are my ponderings on the research that I'm looking at this time, but they are not formally published findings, okay? I want to make that really clear before I dive into these. So the other reason that I want to share these again here, in case one, you're not on Instagram, or two, you watched them, but maybe you felt like there was more that could be said. There always is. Reels are only able to be 90 seconds long, so it's hard to cram everything into a 90-second segment on Reels. But the other reason I want to review these here is because I do hope that it will help some of you, one, get off the fence and start doing nature-based work if you're not already. And two, if you're already doing nature-based work, maybe it will give you more confidence to be able to explain why you do what you do to families and clients. So that is my intention here. So let's dive right into the 10 reasons to take pediatric therapy outdoors. So the first reason is that it reignites your love of your work and helps prevent burnout. So most of us as pediatric therapists are teetering on the edge of burnout. I think we overwork, we overserve, we overdeliver for our clients, and that can lead to us burning out in our work. And what I am hearing from the people I'm interviewing in my research is that taking work outdoors refreshes and reignites your love of the work that you do in your profession. Oh, I should state the people that I interviewed for my research are all occupational therapists. So I should say that because I don't want to speak in this podcast. I am speaking to a variety of different therapists that are working with children, but we should be clear in my communication here that the research that I am doing is with occupational therapy practitioners. However, I do believe that many of these are likely universal findings that would apply to anyone working with children because of the similarities between what OTs do and what many other pediatric healthcare professionals or mental health professionals do. So healthcare professionals and mental health professionals might be saying the same thing, I just realized. So this is why I should not record podcast at 7:30 p.m. at night after a very long day. So I am prioritizing this one because I want to get it out to you by this Friday, like I have promised to do weekly episodes for a while. Okay, Number two is it is strongly supported by evidence. There is so much evidence out there in the research on nature's impact on children's mental and physical health, their cognition, their social emotional skills, play skills, motor skills, sensory processing. There's even some research that I've seen. Now, I can't cite the person right in this moment, but I've seen research on spirituality and children and nature. So it is so supported by evidence to do work with children outdoors. And specifically, I would say work with children who have developmental challenges. I think it's even more important for the kids that we work with as pediatric therapists. So that is the second reason. It is strongly supported by evidence. The third reason to take pediatric therapy outdoors is that it is more affordable than indoor practice settings. So I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here because I made someone really mad on Instagram and they kind of publicly shamed me and said, Laura, this is no way to go about building your brand by bashing other professionals. And I was not bashing anyone with my reel, but what made this person mad was that I made a comment about ball pits being really annoying to clean in one of my reels and how you won't have to clean up. It was a joke. You won't have to clean all those stupid balls in the ball pit. I said at the end, like if you take your work outdoors. And the point of the whole reel was to say that clinic space is really expensive. If you work in an indoor practice setting or if you run a pediatric clinic, you know this. You know that indoor space is really expensive and it's really expensive to maintain all of that equipment that is in an indoor space. And generally, when you do your work outdoors, it's more affordable than having an indoor clinic or renting space even in an indoor clinic if you were just going to be like an independent practitioner renting space from someone else. So generally it's way more affordable. And what happened was this person felt like in my reel, because I was saying that it was more affordable than indoor practice settings and I made the joke about ball pits and not having to clean the balls, they made the assumption that I was bashing specifically OT professionals. And that nothing could be further from the truth. If you have listened to me at all, you know that I have a previous podcast I did for 3 years. I did episodes for OT entrepreneurs. I have spent a lot of time supporting OTs in their practices. And so I, of course, was not meaning to offend anyone. And I think I said this on Instagram, and I want to say it here for the record, because this will live much longer than an Instagram post, that I think as practitioners and as people in the world in general, we need to get more comfortable with nuance, and we need to know that if people disagree with us, they are not bashing us, okay? So it's okay to disagree. And the more divisive our world gets, the more divisive we get about politics and religion and all of these things, social issues that we all need to have opinions on, right? It is important to have informed opinions about these things and to have your own opinions. but it doesn't mean that you're bashing someone else if you disagree with them. So just because I think that ball pits don't have a lot of therapeutic value for children doesn't mean that you can't have one in your clinic if you think it's great. So, I had to, sorry, I'm going off a little bit here because it's a soapbox a little bit, but I do want to encourage you all that sometimes when you are building a business and when you put things out there, it's okay to make people a little mad, because that clearly showed me that I was speaking to the right people and that person was not my ideal customer. Correct? So it's okay to make people a little mad. Now, there's no place for hate. I said this on Instagram as well. Like, obviously, like things that are racist or homophobic, things like that have no place in opinions. I'm sorry. There's a right and wrong in the world. But like, if you are doing marketing for your business, sometimes it's okay to offend the people who are not your right customers. Like, you'll repel the wrong people and attract the right people as a result, if you will put yourself out there and give an opinion on social media. So that's a little side comment about marketing in your business. But in general, know that it is more affordable if you take your work outdoors. That's number 3. Okay, number 4. This gets into the marketing piece too. So this is a good segue. Number 4 is that parents will value your service because it gets their kids off of screens and playing outdoors. So when people value something, they will pay for it. And that is absolutely one of the reasons why taking your work outdoors, it sets you apart in your community, because you're doing something different than 99.9% of every other pediatric therapy clinic out there. So parents will see that, and that sets you apart as something of value in your community. So that's the number 4. Now, okay, I am going to get into my research now, because I told you I would, and those first few didn't have as much about the research as these next few will. So the number 5 reason to take pediatric therapy outdoors is that we are biologically wired to be calmed by nature. So there are several different theories: stress reduction theory by Roger Ulrich, attention restoration theory by Stephen and Rachel Kaplan, as well as E.O. Wilson's biophilia hypothesis. All 3 of those theories talk about the theory and they attempt to explain why humans are so attracted and calmed by the natural environment. So if you think about where people go on vacation, they go to beautiful places, they go to the beach, they go to the woods, they get away, right? In these natural environments. And this is part 2 of evolutionary biology, really. Like, for millions of years, we lived in much closer connection to nature. Kids belong in nature. That is where they belong. So do we, but kids especially, right? As they're growing up. So we are biologically wired to be calmed by nature. And this is something that I think this is one of the highest codes in my research, meaning this theme appeared the most often in my conversations with therapists, is that the natural environment seems to kind of decrease sensory overload, both for the children and for the therapist. So this therapist feels like they don't get as stressed working out in nature. And the kids have room to like move and be themselves and be loud and like be who they really are. That's another thing that's coming up, like freedom to be oneself in nature. So I think there's something here. And again, this is very early on my thinking about the findings of my research. And so my thoughts are not fully formed yet. You're hearing like my early ideas, which are not like fully formed theories yet. But I really do think there's something here because, specifically as OTs, we think about the sensory influence of the environment on us. And that was really clear as the OTs were talking about nature-based work, is that they saw the natural environment as a more calming place to offer therapy services for children. And also, let's be real, nature is sometimes harsh. And that is another reason to take our work with kids outdoors, because that's number 6. So the number 6 reason is that nature offers real risk, real life. It is a place where real problems happen and children have opportunities to problem solve and come up with solutions to real problems that the therapist is experiencing with them. So I would say that almost no treatment setting can do this the way that nature does. I've thought a little bit about this. And again, these are early thoughts, but I thought, well, maybe like if you had an indoor clinic that really mimicked a child's natural environment, or maybe if you're seeing them in their home, right? But usually the environments that we see kids in are so controlled. The therapist is really controlling that environment. And I think that kids might actually be able to handle a lot more risk and even danger than we are offering them in our treatment settings. I mean, we all know that children need more risky play nowadays, and in nature, that just happens much more frequently than it can in an indoor setting. A finding in my research that is coming up a lot is that the therapists are saying that beauty about children engaging in these risky, it sounds weird to say risky behaviors, like risky play is a better way to say it. Not dangerous, but risky, the just right kind of risk where they're not going to get physically injured forever, but might get a scraped knee. The therapists are saying that the beauty of nature for offering these opportunities for children to kind of test their limits and engage in risky play is that the therapist doesn't get blamed for the challenge that is there. So in an indoor environment, the therapist is manipulating that indoor environment to set it up in a way that challenges the child. Just enough, right? We don't want to over challenge them. But nature actually is kind of like outside the human expectations of behavior in a sense. Again, early thoughts, y'all. I'm like, oh my gosh, are people even going to think I'm making sense here? So nature is not a human, right? Like it's not a human person. And children tend to, when they go into the natural world, and for example, maybe they see a huge tree that fell across the trail where you planned to take a hike that day. Well, the children don't get mad at nature that tree fell down. But if you're in an indoor clinic and you set up an obstacle for them, they might get kind of mad at you and frustrated and feel like the adults are the ones making things hard for them, right? So nature kind of serves as a blameless co-therapist who challenges children naturally within the context of her environment. So along with that, number 7 is that nature levels the playing field. So this is a code that I came up with early in the research and is showing up a lot too in my interviews, is that nature is not inherently an adult controlled environment. Like so many spaces that kids inhabit in daily life, like at school, the adults are saying what they have to do. And in the clinic space, we try to be child-led as much as possible, but it's still, they're coming into our environment, right? And nature, on the other hand, is a neutral space. It's a space that levels power dynamics. That's something else coming up in the research, and levels the playing field so that the therapist and the child are in it together. They're experiencing the weather together. They're experiencing the bugs together. They're experiencing the mud together. And it's not something that's contrived by the therapist, but the environment is a neutral space so that the therapist can really connect with the kids and be in it with the children rather than kind of be the one leading the session. So, I'll be real. There's still power struggles, right? It's not like children just perfectly behave outdoors and it's a panacea that fixes everything. But context does matter. And the context of nature lets the session start and end in a place that decreases the experiences of power dynamics that are usually prevalent in children's lives and that they constantly are feeling like they're not the ones in control, right? Like everybody else is controlling their lives. So many children's books have been written about children kind of being the ones in control. I think of The Boxcar Children as a great example. That was one of my son's favorite books. We read it a couple times when he was really young. It's such a beautiful story, right? Of kids really like being independent and making it on their own. Like those are the stories that resonate with children because they want that. They want that freedom, Freedom is another thing that is very prevalent in my research, but that's not in this list, I don't think. So, okay, number 8. Number 8 is kind of a business idea, and this is that you can make your nature-based work whatever you want it to be. So this is one of the reels I made that I wanted to make longer, but I simply did not have time that day to spend hours on end creating a reel. So I want to go into a little more detail here. So when you create a nature-based practice, right, outdoors, there's so many different ways you can do that. There's hundreds of ways to offer outdoor therapeutic programming for children. You can design your practice how you want it to be so that you will love your work forever. I mean, you can't say that in any job. Jobs can change, but when you are running your own thing, you can make it what you want it. And if it ends up being something you don't like, you can change it because you are the one calling the shots because you're the owner of the practice or the program. So I would really encourage you to think about how you could create something outdoors that would be really aligned with your values and what you want to be doing. There are therapists all around the world running all different kinds of nature-based businesses like surfing clubs or hiking clubs or birding events. There are so many different ways. So I want you to think about what you really love and don't feel like you have to do it the exact same way that other people do it. Now, I will say it is helpful if you have a community around you to support you as you get started so that you know that you are building something that is sustainable as a business. So you know me, I'm all for if you want to do a hobby and be a philanthropist, that's fine, but a business needs to be able to make money. So when you are creating what you want to do in nature-based work, you need to make sure that there's a need for that in your community or in the population that you want to serve, and to make sure that you can find a way to get paid to do that. So, okay, number 9, moving on here. Nature offers open-ended, loose parts versus the close-ended toys that we find in a lot of our indoor settings. So I think a lot of times in indoor work, and this has been mentioned by several therapists in the interviews for my research, that it's easy to get a little bit lazy, for lack of a better word, in an indoor treatment setting. The same old that everyone does, because all those tools and equipment and games and toys are right there for you to use. So it doesn't require as much creativity because you can kind of fall back on the tried and true same things you do a lot of the time. And in contrast, in nature, there's always something different. And there are millions of open-ended loose parts in the environment in order for children to have to come up with their own ideas and practice for cognitive flexibility and creativity and imagination. And that is something that makes nature a really rich environment for therapy services for kids. And number 10 goes along with that. And that is that you don't need as many supplies for treatment sessions as you do in an indoor setting. And that in turn makes you a better therapist. You learn to observe more closely. You learn to be more creative with what you have available to you in the environment. And you connect way more deeply with the children because all that stuff of the indoor setting is kind of stripped away and leaving you with yourself and the child in the outdoor world and a few simple supplies. And it just changes the engagement that you can have as a therapist in the treatment session as well. So again, early ideas, that is coming up in my research as well. Early ideas, and we'll see kind of how this all formulates into a theory in my research when someday it will be done. Honestly, y'all, I think it might be another year. I'm supposed to be done by December, but I just don't see any way to possibly get it all done by December. So we'll see. But what is happening this week, which I am so excited about, is that the Therapy in the Great Outdoors community library and business hive are open for you to join. Now, this episode is coming out on Friday. I will be on social media talking about this all week. I'm recording this on Monday. If you are listening to this on Friday, the 29th of July, the cart closes at 9 p.m. tonight. So it is a very short cart, but I have been telling y'all about it for weeks on end. So it is a very short cart open. We open the cart for the library and the business hive, which has all the business coaching resources in it, only during the last week of July and the last week of January every year. So if you do not get in now, you will wait until January. I am not going to go into great detail here about what is included because I think that you are a thinking adult. And if you are interested in either of these resources, which are the library is done for you resources for nature-based practice, the Business Hive is business coaching with me in a community and loads of business resources for you. If you are interested in either of those things, you can go to therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com and find out all about them before 9 p.m. tonight on July 29th. And join us inside of the community. I will love to see you there. Our first call for the Business Hive will be on August 23rd, and that program will start rolling out on August 1st after the cart closes Friday the 29th. So that's it. Short little message that I want you to join us inside and get all these amazing resources and take your work outdoors with ease and confidence and no stress and fun. Totally fun. Like, we have worked so hard to make sure that the things we are offering you in this community are always fun for kids. That's very important in nature-based work. Well, in any pediatric therapy work, really. But go check it out there, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Now I'm going to move to a 2-week, every other week episode. So I will publish the next one in 2 weeks, and we will be doing 2 per month because I will soon be running my programs and I need to dedicate time to the people inside of there. So I hope maybe that's some of you that are listening. So I will see you inside either the TGO community or I will talk to you on the podcast in a few weeks. Bye. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, exploring therapy in the great outdoors. If you liked what you heard in this episode, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes so we can share the magic of nature-based therapy with a wider audience of therapists who work with children who desperately need connection to nature nowadays, just like we do. If you're ready to take the next step in this adventure, join our free Therapy in the Great Outdoors community at therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com. The TGO community is a private space just for nature-based pediatric practitioners. We have loads of resources there to support you as you start or grow a nature-based practice or program. Our free TGO community has a discussion forum, a jobs and volunteers board, a crowdsourced treatment activities section, as well as free video trainings, research article reviews, and book recommendations from yours truly. Head on over to therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com to join today. So until next time, get outside, connect, reflect, and enjoy the business and practice of therapy in the great outdoors.